Okay, well, thank you, Kota.
Thanks for watching.
Sorry about the sound. So for people who are watching through Zoom, you should be aware that there's the sound, if you're listening in stereo from uh, watching the real video from YouTube or wherever, the sound moves around sort of in the space. There's a stereo effects that I think might have been lost just now watching it through Zoom, but I hope you were able to get a sense of the work. So thank you very much, Kota, for sharing that with us.
Thank you so much for watching.
And so, Kota, I want to get started and kind of ask you about the development, the origins, and the process of researching and producing this project. But before I do, I want to let everyone know that we're recording the meeting, but if we use any imagery from this meeting, like for, I don't know, like a promotion or something, if anybody is going to be using any part of the recording, it's just going to be me and Kota. So participant, we can black out or sort of fuzz out people who are here just as audience members. So I just want to let you know that we are recording, but we're not going to be publicizing anything that will sort of transgress anyone's privacy. So thank you for understanding. So Kota, what I guess since we've just shared this video project that you completed last year, right, in 2019, I believe. I was wondering, so I had never heard of the balloon bombs until you contacted me about them. I guess that was probably in 2018. So we had met when you came to the US to do some of your research. I think you made multiple trips, but that was the first time, it was through you, it was the first time that I heard about these. I was wondering if you could share how you first learned about them, and then maybe from there just describe how you researched the project and yeah, how it came together.
Yeah, I live in Iwaki City in Fukushima Prefecture in Japan. It's east, nearby the Pacific Ocean. Then, while I was researching about the local history in my town, I encountered with the Falun Gong history. So one day I participated in the local historical study groups gathering and the short trip around my town to look through some of the ruins and landscape which has history of the industry and war. Then that was the occasion to know about the Falun Gong for me. So it was my town's history. And 2 years ago, I got the grant to for residency in US. So I decided to do research trip about the Falun Gong in US. So before that, I visited some places related to the Falun Gong in Japan. My town and the other town next to my town used to have the place where the Falun Gong was released to the air. Yeah. So yeah, explain about my project more.
So
Yeah.
just very briefly, if you could just describe the
Mm.
how how you located the sites and sort of what kind of equipment you used to
Yeah.
do the filming. I guess kind of the equipment, I guess, is one aspect, but also the social aspect of meeting people and archives and things like that. Just if you could give a just general sense of um,
It, as you saw my video that I used mainly used a small drone uh, for shooting the some places where the balloon bomb was released and the balloon bomb fell down. And I also went to the National Archives and to see the document of the U.S. military. Uh, it was a record about the balloon. Then after the so mainly I did the research and shooting the landscape of the places which which has a history of balloon bombs in the documents. And after I returned to Japan, I mixed with the other topics related to the remote technology and the topics related to the balloon bomb history and war history and history my in my town and the Fukushima. So yeah, could I show the uh, explain the brief explanation about the balloon bomb?
yeah. So if you can share your
Yeah.
screen, you can, yeah.
So at the end of the World War II, the Japanese weapon was attacking the mainland of the United States by this bomb. It was called the balloon bomb. The Japanese army tied the bombs to the balloons filled with hydrogen and released them towards the sky from the east coast in Japan. So it is an operation that the westerly wind blows this balloon to America and explodes somewhere. It sounds foolish story, but the Japanese army released approximately over 9,000 balloons seriously, and hundreds of them delivered to the land of the North American continent. Explosions and suspicious fires, balloons themselves were found in various places. Then in Oregon, uh, as I shown in the video, 6 people were killed by the weapon, and the balloon also fell down nearby the nuclear facility in Washington state that was producing the plutonium for atomic bombs. So yeah, such these are the brief, brief information with balloon bomb. And we could know such info just see Wikipedia. Then I wanted to pursue more detailed and physically about the bomb. This is an image from the German artist, filmmaker Harun Farocki. My trip started from the motivation to shoot the phantom image of the balloon bomb. Phantom image was termed by the artist Harun Farocki. It means the image is mediated massively during Gulf War, emerged with the cruise missiles in 1980s, so-called smart bombs. In his words, the film footage of the camera that is plugging towards its target, a suicidal camera, stays in our mind. We can interpret the film that takes up the perspective of the bombs as a phantom subjective image, he said. So my initial motivation was to remake the phantom image of the balloon bomb. So it's like the Japanese version of Harun Farocki.
So you're thinking of trying to create the kind of the bomb's eye view or the balloon's eye view
Yes,
of balloon bombs. With this idea, it's kind of, I think maybe we're familiar with those images from the kind of nose of the smart bombs that as they're kind of going right towards their target. So, but recreating this for these balloon bombs, which were,
yeah,
and there is a continuity of like these are kind of remote weapons that travel between the continents. That and this is Ross Cohen's here with us. So he's written a book in English about the balloon bombs, and I think he makes the point that this is the first intercontinental sort of remote weapon that's used. So there is some continuity to smart bombs and drones, but
yeah,
there's
yeah. But there's also the difference between balloons and remote, the contemporary remote bombs. Yeah, it's vision and control. Remote missiles, drones aim at target on the far side of the globe, be controlled by soldiers. So it's manipulative image. But the balloon bomb have no way to see, the target. There was no control by soldiers. So such bombs has a super eye. Balloon has no eye. So maybe this is my production or the produced eye view. It's not the exact perspective of the balloon bomb. So this is why I defined the balloon bomb as blind bomb. Mm.
And the process of reconstructing, it's reconstructed based on historical documentation and visiting sites and meeting people who witnessed them, or maybe who had relatives or friends who witnessed them. But the reconstruction is still a reconstruction, and imagining the the particular the specific site where the one of them landed can't be completely sort of you can't pin it down with complete accuracy, and many of them
Yeah,
were. Mm.
yeah, it was difficult to pinpoint. Yeah.
And I was wondering, in terms of the question of the remote monitoring. So with the contemporary drones, there's the ability of the soldiers, the pilots, to see from where the drone is. But with the balloon bombs, it's the blind bombs. Um, it's like in the film, there's different. You talk about it's not just the bombs that are blind. It's right. So there's like during World War II, at the end in 1943, 44, 1945, there's sort of so much control of the media in Japan and in the US, that it seems like you're also making a comment about a more general kind of blindness.
Yeah.
Like,
So,
can you say more about that?
yeah, blind. Yes, as you said, my grandparents' generation made balloons, and they all they could do was look up the balloons being disappeared into the sky, and by strict material law, it is forbidden to talk about the balloons. And after the war, the Japanese military disposed of uh, official documents related to the development of the balloons. So the blindness has more meaning of the censorship and loss of the official document of history. So I feel like the blindness of various meaning.
And in some ways, the blindness kind of creates the potential for. I'm thinking about kind of during the war, creates kind of blank screen or like a blank slate where the more like fantasy, or you can kind of project anything that you want onto the blindness. So in the absence of the real information, there's you can imagine scenarios that are sort of comfortable or affirming to your position or to yourself.
To you mean the
So like you had I think it was an interview with somebody talking about the balloons sort of going off from the launch site, maybe in Iwaki, so one after the other, and then um, the girls who were making the fabric for the balloons kind of celebrating when they were told that they were causing a lot of damage and destruction in the United States. That kind of it's potential to imagine sort of something that anything that kind of makes oneself, or seem stronger or in better position, or just affirmed.
sorry, Could you tell me, is it a question or
Mm, yeah,
opinions?
so I was trying to kind of connect to, so I guess one way to see the balloon bombs is as being quite different, quite disconnected from the contemporary society.
Mm.
Um, so you could see them as being sort of like an early and basically failed attempt at sort of remote weaponry. Uh, but I feel like the you're also interested in the kind of mental situation, the kind of mental
Uh,
condition that makes something like this possible. Is kind of there's a mental space that goes along with this kind of balloon, which launching a balloon has this tremendous destructive power, but launching it up into the winds and letting it go, and then in its absence, imagining things, the result of that action as something that fulfills your desire, that sort of completes its course in a way that rewards oneself. But it's specifically because specifically because it's blind, right? Because there isn't the kind of awareness, there isn't the knowledge about what actually happens to most of the balloon bombs.
so the blindness in for the past, the people in past, they didn't have the enough informations, and there is a censorship and blindness. For me, uh, it's difficult to see or to know because it's uh, old story, more than 70 years ago. So I think my shooting is uh, both. It has both meaning, uh, connecting the two kind of uh, blindness of past and present, and also uh, I want to update the image of the balloon bomb from the my grandparents' generation. Because of the blindness, my grandparents' generation uh, imagined the enemy, imagined the enemy, and just imagine the effect of the balloon bombs. But I think nobody saw it directly. So I wanted to update the image of the balloons. So it's like the uh, double meaning in blindness and the visualization of
Mm,
image of balloons. Uh, the post meaning my video has, I think so.
mm. So the blindness makes a certain kind of violence possible, but it's kind of a violence that's very safe for the people who are for the person who launches, say, the balloon. And it's speaking maybe more generally than just the balloon bombs themselves, but kind of violence that's very safe, comfortable, even for the person launching launching the balloon. Uh, it's very there's no sort of direct feedback. There's no direct contact with the destructiveness or the suffering that action causes. So it's the remote nature of the event that's supposed to happen at the end of that, like as a result of that initial release. Um, so you've connected it with like um, people's relationships with each other in sort of contemporary social media. Is the way there's a way to that uh, the kind of connectivity or disconnectivity. It's a weird kind of connectivity. Uh, it's questionable kind of connectivity that allows for people to sort of make statements, make claims that sort of float away from them into the ether. But the where those things land, where those statements or claims or even like verbal violence, right, can be harassment, it can be verbal attacks through this kind of social media. But where those kinds of things land is so it's not visible, it's blind. It's the person who initiates that is never really made, can never really sense the impact that it might have. But
That
at the same time, it might not have any impact, right? So
that's the point I realized after my trip. After I returned to Japan and while sorting the video and the photo materials I should shot in US and
so it was after the
I needed to compare with the temporary remote drone blind for the for the blind home. And you know, do you know in recent days, the, some some people in Palestine, uh, in Gaza district, they use the balloon bomb
mm,
or smaller. Uh, it's uh, small balloon filled with helium,
mm,
and they use the small balloon bomb to attack the uh, Israel. So it's not a remote bomb for to over the over the ocean, just over the border. So there is I can also compare with contemporary small balloon bomb, which is used by the people in Palestine, and uh, the advanced technology remote controlled drone developed by Israel.
mm,
So if I say the all balloon bomb is just blind or uh, just violent, maybe I may ignore such the gap of the uh, drone by Israeli or America and very low technology bomb used by Palestinian people.
mm.
So it's it is like the it makes made me to think more about what is the point of violence. So then I reached to uh, one conclusion: the distance uh, is has the potential of the violent long distance to overcome the very long distance, like fly over the ocean.
Mm.
So I show the Tenome yokai monster
Mm.
and hands by the researchers and historians, the local residents. Uh, their behavior seems like also the blindness for the past. But I feel it's uh, it's far from the violent of the drone because they are on the ground and they
Mm.
use a hand, and the hand is connected to their body. And me also, I have the hand connected to my body, my life, and touch the documents and ground and the monument directly. It's I want to call it is people's fundamental behavior for intelligence
Mm.
information, but just see something from uh, far from,
Mm.
object uh, using the remote technology like my drone.
Mm.
Uh, it's very nearby the violent. Uh, it has the potential of the violent attacking. So there is a gap from the hands to eyes and and ground to the sky
Mm.
and low technology and high technology, advanced technology. So this is the idea from the comparing with the uh, small balloon bomb in Palestine and drone in Israel.
Mm.
So overcoming the long distance has the potential of the violent, I thought.
Mm.
I want to note, I do not deny advanced technology or remote technology. Because now I'm using remote technology to do meeting with you guys, and I'm one of the users of it. Rather than discarding the advanced technology, I just would like to explore what kind of technology it is. It means to see what kind of the world we live today.
Mm. So it's not like technological kind of determinism where like all sort of drone imagery is like automatically uh, violent and alienating, but there's also truth, as you were saying, to this the idea that when you're on the ground talking to actual people and interacting with them and using hands and feet to kind of figure things out, it's a different kind of knowledge than you get from the more abstract, elevated perspective that you get from. I mean, there's different kinds of sort of sensitivities that come into play if you're on the ground somewhere. So of wind and so play of light and you know, vegetation and things. So there's a kind of, it seems like a much richer, some more complicated kind of environment and way of contacting, way of coming into contact with uh, the world with other people.
Mm.
So we're getting to we're getting towards 5 o'clock. I was wondering if other people want to ask questions of Kota. Um, I'm also happy to kind of keep asking questions. but I also don't want to kind of dominate and get in the way. If people have questions that they like to ask, if you'd like to ask a question, you can just kind of move and click on your microphone icon on the bottom left of the screen, and then you should be able to speak. Azusa, did you want to ask anything?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Azusa Tanaka. I'm a Japanese
Hello.
Studies librarian at UW. Yeah, thank you very much for this screening and making a wonderful film. It seems like the one of the themes of this film, as I think Justin and director you've been talking about, it's like vision, blindness, maybe censorship, and then information manipulation. And I couldn't help but associating all these things to what's happening right now in Japan in dealing with those, the pandemic and corona spreading, how the government is dealing with the issue. I feel the mentality of like kamikaze or creating this kind of balloon bomb, which is nothing very scientific or very realistic or well thought in a way, I feel. And then now, in dealing with the pandemic, how the Japanese government is dealing with, I felt there is some sort of association. I'm not sure if you agree with that, but if you think there is similar mentality from Japan back in World War II period and now, what is that? I wonder what's underneath the, this country dealing with either, the visible enemy, like the US in the case back in World War II, or the virus now, invisible enemy, like why Japan deals with things like that in this way?
Thank you. I think now the coronavirus program is under the process, so mm, I'm still thinking, observing what's going on. Honestly, it is difficult to grasp the or to associate or connect to the attitude to the technology. But I just want to say that blindness is one of the attitude of Japanese typical behavior to the technology. My impression, Western country created the technology to view the detailed image of the object far from the in long distance, but Japan made ideology more and more tense by not seeing. So recently, the drone technology unmanned aircraft and hobby drone uh, used for the video artwork or the performance something. And I saw many excellent artworks by using the drone. Uh, but my impression, in Japan, the works by using drones just celebrating the uh, technology itself, uh, not to see the history of the technology or the dark side of the technology. So in Fukushima, uh, after the 2011 nuclear disaster, uh, now people are building the new uh, towns and uh, do the effort to make the new industry uh, to rebuild the uh, town again. So they invite the companies for the advanced technology. So drone is used for the demonstration or the advertisement for the uh, reconstruction story towards the bright future. So personally, I hope the people who wants to return to the town, the government should support. And I hope the reverse of the Fukushima coastal area. But at the same time, I think I should keep calm down to see the what kind of technology is utilized for the making the reconstruction recovery story. So about the information disaster of nuclear accident and the new virus issue, I feel that it's not only the nowadays, not only the government, all people who relate to the who use remote technology face to the environment and have the potential to use the technology to attack somebody or to explore enemy and spreading false information or something. Yeah, it's not only for the problem of the nationalism or something.
Could you? It's feel like there might be some parallel between the issues of 311 and radiation and something like the coronavirus as it's kind of a danger that's very difficult to quantify. I mean, it's invisible. It's difficult to quantify, or it is very variable. in a way that's so it seems impossible to predict how dangerous a particular situation is. But also maybe because of that ambiguity, it seems to spur a lot of anxiety and also a lot of maybe partly as a way to deal with anxiety, but there's a lot of people kind of the volume of people's voices goes up in as it becomes sort of like a mediated problem. I was wondering if you saw some parallels between Fukushima post and kind of post the nuclear accident and the situation now. Maybe also if you just wanted to introduce some of your works about deal with radiation or Fukushima,
Mhm.
or it's, you live in the areas kind of nearby, not very far from the exclusion zones, so you have maybe a particular perspective on that.
Uh, you mean the my recent trial or my past works related to the Fukushima?
Maybe the recent one, meaning the font that you're making, or maybe earlier than that.
Mm,
The
okay, quickly I say first I show this video as a representative of this performance. This is a performance work in the nuclear accident site. Then I moved to Fukushima
Can you
and
put the diagram of that one, the pencil diagram from the finger pointing worker?
diagram.
Where
Sorry.
the diagram where it shows the link, yeah, the link of the network that the camera was connected to. So the the photograph was, the camera actually was connected to the internet. So I guess it was because there's a lot of criticism about what was happening at the site and the cleanup. And so the TEPCO, the electricity company, wanted to make it open for people to view the site through through these cameras.
Yes.
So the performer here in the suit, the worker, used the camera that was actually, the signal from that camera was public, basically, right? So people could watch it online. Is that
So
right?
this time the problem is there is a center of the issue. The
Mm,
nuclear power plant is center of the accident.
mm,
So every radioactive material is released from this plant. So
mm,
uh, yeah, people were in the panic and there was information disaster and false information, but it was simpler than current situation because the virus issue has now there is no center of this pandemic. Yeah, very early stage of the pandemic, the it was from China or Asia, but it becoming there are many places of uh, many places of centers of the virus. So this diagram became a bit old.
mm.
I think so. Mm. But I believe just relation between one user and one device and connected to the world is the same. I think it's same. All information spreaders feel feel comfortable or good for their narcissism to satisfy themselves by spreading or information and touching the devices and checking their articles and their figures by their monitors.
Mm.
So it's the relationship between the users and the internet.
Mm. So for the worker who is looking at their mobile device, it's such a kind of, it's just a loop that completes this image of themselves. It's kind of like a mirror, a little bit different, but the
Yes, yes. It's
the
kind of mirror.
mm,
So yeah, so in early age of the internet in 90s, people believed the story that everything will be connected to the world openly, and it helps our society uh, to support the equality of our discussion. Uh, there are many nodes and links, but nowadays we realize the internet is not so open. There are many closed circle,
mm,
just closed groups generated by social network services. So
and many people.
many closed circle makes the information domestic. So it's not so good situation for the evaluate all informations equally.
Mm. And people, many, well, one, I'm not sure if many people, but and many times people seem to use the internet just to connect to themselves or to verify themselves.
Yes.
It's not sort of connecting with others, learning difference, contacting is being moved in new directions. It's not necessarily functioning in that direction. Mm.
So most of the viewers are the users itself themselves. So I think the most fun of this video is finger pointing worker himself. It's same as the if you write something in the Facebook
Mm.
articles, but most viewers of the article is the writer himself. Uh, somebody is raising the
Oh,
hands
somebody
up.
had a hand up.
Yeah.
I think we might be getting close to the time when the meeting has to wrap up. Oh, Ms. AC Peterson.
That's me. I have my hand up.
Yeah,
Can
go
you
for
hear
it.
me okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kota-san, for that. It's provocative, makes me think a lot. I'm very interested in the balloon bomb and the Fugo, and I'm interested in actually in the schoolgirls who were forced to create these. And how much do you think they really knew or were told when they made these about what they were really used for?
Uh, are you asking the amount of the balloons or the
I'm
people?
asking because I know they recruited schoolgirls or forced them to make these balloons and assemble them. And were they really told honestly about what they were doing? I mean, if they were making bombs, they probably would know. But if they were making these balloons, I just imagine if I were a schoolgirl, I would sort of be in denial and I would want to say, we're making these beautiful objects, you know, beautiful artistic objects. And I wouldn't really want to know. What's your thought?
Is this a question of my impression that for the students, people who produce the balloons,
Yes, a question of your
what they
impressions.
I think they knew what they producing, what they making. Not so they had not so detailed information, but they believed the story. Something they are making the weapon and attack the to attack the enemy, and I think they are not completely innocent for making the weapon. But making the weapon was justice in their in those days. So I can imagine some their feelings by reading the novels and articles written by the people who used to make the balloons. Uh, Nowadays, some people talk talk about the balloon bombs and publish the novels. So and they reflect themselves. They didn't think uh, it is wrong. The making the weapons bad or wrong, because that was the justice for them. Uh, am I answering for you? Exact answer, is it?
Yes, I was just curious about your impressions. I mean, I guess it's similar to women in the United States, you know, riveting airplanes and weapons, you know, the whole
Oh,
Rosie the Riveter. But I
I think it's
I
similar.
was just imagining that some of the schoolgirls who maybe didn't want to build a bomb would just sort of make up a little story in their head about what they were making, just be in denial about it. But I can understand the patriotic um,
Mm.
uh, theme that would be going through it. So yes, thank you.
No, I think same as US.
It looks like so we were concerned that the meeting might shut itself down at 5:15, but it looks like it hasn't. Does anyone have one last question?
I had a question, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Koto-san, and yes, thank you so much for organizing this event. I I was wondering about uh, connections to some of your prior works, such as Portable Mind Yokohama, and the story of um, these wanted posters and
Uh,
one of the perpetrators of the Aum Shinrikyo sarin gas attacks, you know, being an old picture on the wanted posters and then going to try to turn himself in. And the police officers at the police box saying, oh, no, you can't be this person. This is like a famous most wanted poster celebrity. And having to go to like, numerous police boxes in order to turn himself in. I think that kind of your commentary on your kind of paintings of these most wanted posters about how works become, oh, great.
yeah, this one.
These most wanted posters kind of becoming just part of the environment and no longer communicating a threat, but simply kind of making people more vulnerable to danger, has a connection that I don't totally understand about, or in connection to the way that information about the balloon bombs was censored in North America and in Japan, where say these children may not have died if this information was widely available, and they wouldn't have thought, oh, these balloons are toys that I can play with and then be blown up. I just feel that that insight in both of these projects has a lot to say about kind of the availability of information today, especially as the balloon bomb moment came about and during this kind of anti-Japanese sentiment that was already there in the country. Even kind of thinking about the availability of information now with the coronavirus as kind of xenophobic, kind of anti-Asian generalized sentiment is so pervasive. I don't know if you could comment on that kind of sense of how concealing the danger actually kind of makes people more vulnerable to violence.
So, are you asking something or was it the opinion?
It's my opinion.
Okay,
Connecting to this prior work,
thank you.
I'm wondering if you kind of feel similarly about where that the concealing of information actually can increase the danger for, say, these children especially.
Maybe I'm interested in the border of violence and the daily life. So the wanted fugitives images first are in early stage of the incident. We are it was a scary image, but it becoming the they just a part of the landscape because the wanted fugitives images are spread all over the Japan, and people realize that more time passes, his image is becomes far from the exact the wanted fugitive's face itself, and people become um, not so tense and not, not to be uncomfortable from this image. And balloon bomb history, uh, first time I heard about the balloon, I didn't feel the impression it can be the weapon, the balloon, because balloons are sometimes the event of uh, something celebration, or the people fly the many colored fancy balloons, and the children like the balloons. It's peaceful image, so it was difficult to connect the violent to the balloon. So I think the strange feeling to the balloon bomb is maybe it's similar to the feeling to the wanted fugitives image, which became the just daily landscape, daily life's landscape. Uh, both has a memory of the violent, but images become the less tense, become more not so special. Such kind of yeah, such yes, and as you said about the environment of the information itself is both has a similar feeling. I've had a similar feeling from the both of them. But maybe I have to say about coronavirus. Now I'm not sure what is the image of the fear or scare. Maybe now there is a people who feel the violence or danger of the virus itself. And there are the other people who feel uneasy or scary to the people or informations. So it is difficult to find the image of the coronavirus for me now. Mm.
Right. So I think we're kind of to gradually losing people as they go back to wherever they're going back to. But so I think we should wrap up here. But I wanted to say thank you to Kota for joining us early in the morning and sharing his work with us. the links to his website, includes his portfolio, and it's a very nice essay that he's written. It's kind of in relation to blind bombing, filmed by a bat, so that kind of expands on some of the issues that we discussed today, but also that I think that are kind of implicit, maybe nascent, below the surface in this work. So if you have time, I encourage you to go back and go to his website and click through to some of the additional material he has there. It's a really interesting essay, and it's a great work. I wish you could have come back and visited physically and sort of gotten your feet on the ground again here. So so that you could have, and that, you know, the memorial ceremony, I imagine, was to take place on the 5th or thereabouts. Yeah, wish it could have happened, but I'm sure it will be happening in the future at some point. And so we look forward to when you can come back physically again and join us again. So, and thank you for everyone who joined us. I don't know where everyone's coming in from, but it's great to see you. And thank you very much, and thank you to Kota.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay,
I
so
want to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we can maybe.
Thank you.
Bye,
Have a nice
Danny. Thank you for
Thanks.
coming.